Hello and welcome to Computer Games. Today's episode is a double header. We will be looking at two very different titles that are both in the Bases Loaded series. In total, the series has 8 titles spread out over the NES, Game Boy, and SNES, with the early titles being some of the best sellers on the original Nintendo Entertainment System. The game was published by well-known arcade and home console company Jaleco, but the game was actually developed by Jose. Most recently, they actually developed the Switch port of Breath of the Wild. It was actually originally programmed by Nintendo EAD for the Wii U. They've done original work on major Nintendo series like Kid Icarus and are responsible for the Legend of Starfy series. Their most recent work includes collaborations with Intelligent Systems, and their classic Famicom Detective Club will be released later on this year and was originally developed by them back in 1989. It would be easy to keep talking about the developer here, but with that being said, the bar has been raised very high for these two titles. The first one we're going to look at is Super Bases Loaded 2, released in 1994. As you can see right off the bat, the graphics are amazing. This is something that is greatly enhanced by the Retron5's graphics filter. However, as you can see, once the field of view changes, things look downright unbecoming for a 16-bit system. Yes, you have some very well detailed visuals when you're batting, pitching, and a lot of the times fielding. However, there is a zoomed out perspective that looks like it is from a very, very early game on the Super Nintendo, if that. The bright side of the visuals, however, are impressive throughout the game, and they are made possible through the SA1 chip. This is the chip that powered Super Mario Kart and several other titles that had enhanced Mode 7 effects. As long as you continue to watch videos on this channel, you will hear me go on and on about how great Mode 7 effects look on the Retron5. On a scale of 1 to 5, I give the graphics a 4 out of 5. They do look absolutely amazing while you are viewing them through the Mode 7 perspective. However, there is a good portion of the game that downright looks terrible. There's nothing offensive about the menus. Things like imaginary team logos are well done. Again, on a scale of 1 to 5, I give the graphics a 4 out of 5. The game's soundtrack was made with a variant from the Nintendo developed software, and it is something that, in most people's opinion, was done very poorly at the time. I will say that the sound coming through the Retron5 is by no means offensive. It is noticeable that there is about one song in the game. There is a very heavy bass sound to it that, from what I understand, sounded poorly when coming out of the Super Nintendo. I can relate, there were some games that I know developed with a budget software, so to speak, that had inferior sound compared to the high quality you're used to on this system. The Retron5 makes it sound good whenever it's being played. Sound effects that are a staple of baseball games from the decade that this was released are there. They do sound good on the Retron5. It is your standard umpire calls with nothing special. On a scale of 1 to 5, I give the sound a 3. A 3 flat. It's got what you expect in a baseball game. The sound effects of the field, and particularly the crowd, sound good. The umpire calls are there. They do, however, sound muffled. I really do appreciate how the Retron5 can make sound so much better than it sounded originally. This was something where the soundtrack was produced with budget being the number one concern, and the reverb that you probably hear out of this game when played on a Super Nintendo is magically turned away by the Retron5. The game avoids a common pitfall among baseball game controls. Usually, if there's a problem, it has to do with how you handle the fielders. In Super Bases Loaded 2, most of the fielding is done automatically. You only have control of fielders when the game is displaying the zoomed out low resolution perspective. Movement of your fielders during that time is responsive and intuitive. I did notice a large number of balls I threw to cutoff men or the infielders would get dropped. On a scale of 1 to 5, I give the controls a 4 out of 5. They are very responsive. What you do have control of is accessible. It is a pick up and play game. There is a lot, however, that is simply being auto-played, and there are some things that aren't perfect about it. Perhaps my favorite feature about the game is the ability to edit player names and stats. Here you can see me begin reconstruction of a roster that will soon look like the 2021 Philadelphia Phillies. I think it adds a lot of value to the game. I prefer this over the very popular RBI baseball. People are paying good money to get a new version of that every year just with updated rosters and players. So here you have a game that you could buy once and continue to update as the years go on and have a great pick up and play retro experience. On a scale of 1 to 5, I give the game a 3.5 out of 5. There's a lot worse out there. This game is something that is a solid pickup. If money isn't an object, however, and you want a baseball game, go get Ken Griffey Jr.'s Winning Run. When you begin to compare this game to others in a lower price category, this is a game that will definitely set you back more than 10 or 15 bucks. You're going to find a lot more value in games priced at about $5. What this game is definitely a strong rental. This is something that will be for people who appreciate the Super Nintendo and love to see Mode 7 effects. Baseball fans will definitely appreciate the flexibility you have here to create a roster with modern day players or really whoever you want to. The thing that separates this from elite baseball games isn't the fact that the fielding is done automatically. I think that's cool, and there is a little bit here and there of the fielding for you to control. It's the fact that the game seems to have an awkward slowdown. It's something that was common in Super Nintendo games. It's not something you associate with Mode 7 games. There's no slowdown in Mario Kart, and it is something that, while it isn't all the time, it isn't a problem where it breaks the game. When it does occur, it seems to affect the play. The ball simply goes foul every single time there is a slowdown. Before we move on to the next game, another interesting note about the developer Toze. It is a port specialist. Along with the Breath of the Wild port, they are also responsible for all of the Final Fantasy ports on Game Boy Advance, the appreciable PlayStation Final Fantasy ports of the classics 4 and 5 and also Chrono Trigger, and the Final Fantasy Tactics port on PlayStation Portable. And when they weren't handling ports, Toze was developing mainstream Resident Evil releases like Resident Evil Code Veronica for the Sega Dreamcast and Resident Evil 0 for the Nintendo GameCube. Metal Gear Ghost Babel, Thousand Arms, and every single Dragon Ball Z game on the Super Nintendo are part of this developer's very impressive library. Again, too much to speak about in this video here, but definitely check them out. Now on to the second game in the massive Toze catalog, Bases Loaded 3, released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1991 by Jalico. While this game is running on 8-bit hardware, it is easy to see while this was higher regarded on the earlier system than it was during the 16-bit era. This plays much better than the game we reviewed earlier in the episode. It's by no means perfect, but for an 8-bit baseball game trying to deliver a simulation-type experience, it really achieves a high level of success. The graphics by NES standards are very impressive. The Retron5 does a nice job smoothing over the edges and makes everything look like it's almost hand-drawn. The pitcher-batter interface is displayed from behind the pitcher, giving it TV-like realism. The view will actually change based on whether you have a right or left-handed pitcher. just add a level of immersion, it actually adds a, in my opinion, level of challenge when facing left-handed pitchers. The game is very colorful, you'll see detail everywhere you look, my favorite being the ivy in the Chicago outfield wall. Player animation is also a benchmark for the Nintendo Entertainment System. You can actually see wrinkles and shades in the pitcher's clothes as he goes through his motion. It is very impressive to see. So, the official computer game score for the graphics on Bases Loaded 3 is a 5 out of 5. This is a benchmark for the Nintendo Entertainment System. I have not played a better looking sports game on there. I can also compare this to what I played on the Sega Master System, and it looks better than the sports titles that I have played on there as well. The game's sound was done by Tatsuya Ishimura, who is well known in the industry for doing sound effects for Capcom. He's responsible for many of the sound effects in the various ports of Street Fighter 2, and the music he did while with Toze is, in my opinion, exceptional. There's 3 different tracks to choose from in this game, my favorite being the rendition that sounds close to the Ultimate Warrior theme music. While the music has a lot of quality and variety, the sound effects are very impressive. They sound more like they're coming from a 16-bit system than an 8-bit one. This has a great deal to do with the Retron5 upscaling the sound, but the umpire calls are on par with many 16-bit baseball games. On a scale of 1 to 5, I give the sound a 5 out of 5. There is a lot of polish here for a sports game. Again, the music would be exceptional in any NES title, and the voice quality and sound design is the best you're going to find in the industry for the time. After throwing praise on the game so far during this review, my news about the controls will really come across as disappointing. When you move one outfielder, you move all 3 at the same time. This is a horrible feature to include in a baseball game. Complicating matters is when fly balls make their way to the outfield. It is from a zoomed up perspective. You have no idea where it's going, you won't see the player who can catch the ball until it's almost too late, and there's sometimes you may think a pop fly should be fielded by your infielders when it's going to go to the warning track. Things are very responsive around the entire ballpark, and really you'll find most of the trouble in the outfield. Navigating menus is also something that is done with ease. While there are some things to be concerned about, the controls do earn a score of 3.0 out of 5. The outfielding is absolutely horrendous. Everything about it except throwing the ball back is incredibly awkward in a risky situation. With all that bad, there is some good. The controls are very responsive. Moving around the infield is intuitive. It might take a little bit of getting used to, but the overall batter-pitcher interface is one of the best you will find in the NES baseball collection. And the game does an amazing job recreating just how much left-handed pitching can throw a baseball game off. Like just about every other baseball game, the best experience is going to be in multiplayer. So overall, with Bases Loaded 3, you're getting a mixed bag. While you will have a difficult time managing things while you're in the outfield, the other players on the field actually have a surprising amount of intelligence. When the computer is taking control of players and moving them around for your team, they always go in an intelligent and helpful direction. It is also common to see infielders and outfielders back each other up. While it is definitely a sports simulation from the early 90s, it is one that is still fun to play today. It can compete with a lot of the 16-bit titles out there, probably some of the 32-bit, but not all of them. I give Bases Loaded 3 a score of 3.5 out of 5 on the fun factor. The The best things about this game are in the details. There's just a lot here to appreciate. How much is going to depend on how much of a challenge you're looking for. This does play for the most part like a normal baseball game, but instead of having a season mode, you are actually judged on how well you play the game. It does things like calculate how many errors you make versus how many catches, home runs, runs scored against you, and pretty much you're given a grade on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being the way you beat the game. The final verdict on Super Bases Loaded 3 is it is a rental. It is not a trash NES game. If you want to own every worthwhile title in the library, put this on your list. If you are somebody who is looking to get games to have fun while playing them on the Retron5, definitely one to consider. There's just better ones out there. It is something when you consider price, this is a very affordable game. I think that Bases Loaded 1, 2, and 3 are all going to be at a very, very affordable price point. This is going to be different than the first two. It's going to have better graphics, but it is going to have a high challenge and the whole we're going to judge you like a figure skater thing. It's actually done much better on the Super Nintendo with Super Bases Loaded. This is really an inferior 8-bit port of that game. There's just a lot of good things about it. So that's going to conclude this episode of Computer Games. It was great. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to more soon.